This is a presentation of Michigan State University's Knight Center for Environmental Journalism.
Welcome to Environment. Hi, I'm Jamal Spencer. The chilly darkness of night. For most of us, it's a time to seek shelter, security, and warmth. But for the creatures known as stringiforms, it's time to go out on the hunt. Owls have always seemed eerie and mysterious. Their shadowy lives shrouded in the moonlight, unseen and unheard. Silently, they swoop down, snatching unsuspecting prey in a flash. They are apex predators sitting atop the food chain. They can be found throughout the world, and with few exceptions, they flourish. Our fascination with owls spans eons. We have depicted them in our art, on our coins, and in our children's books and toys. Please join us now as we take a behind-the-scenes look at some of the surprising discoveries being made about these creatures who work on the night shift.
Great horned owls don't really have any natural predators.
Along the banks of Michigan's Tittabawassee River lives an animal seldom seen.
They will attack hawks, they will attack eagles in rare cases.
But often heard.
They're not really afraid of anything.
It hunts by starlight and sleeps by day.
Once they're full grown, they don't have much of a predator basis.
And considers most other woodland creatures easy prey. Over 200 species of owls call our planet home. They are nearly perfect predators, having few enemies and even fewer friends. They are the essence of myth and legend, living a secret existence hidden far from our daily lives. And yet, in spite of their mysterious nature, throughout the ages, owls have been known, feared, and admired.
Some of the earliest pictographs that depict birds are of owls. The Greek goddess Athena, warrior in wisdom, and a few other things she was the goddess of. Her mascot was an owl, and the coins of the day actually had her depiction on one side and an owl on the other, and the coins were referred to as owls. And that's one of the theories about how owls being associated with wisdom came about. A dead owl hung outside your door could ward off evil, but if you heard an owl hoot at night, or especially saw an owl during the daytime, which was unusual, it meant you were going to die soon, or somebody very close to you was going to die soon.
Oslo is a Eurasian eagle owl now housed in Lansing, Michigan's Potter Park Zoo. Raised in captivity, in his 15 years of life, he's never known the wild. Dennis Laidler has been his handler and companion for the last 5 years.
Now, they have quite a variety of pitches and combinations of hoots and barks and things that they'll do.
Laidler has devoted his life to teaching others about the lives of owls and other birds.
We don't hear his wings at all. And you know what he's doing right now? It's called back flapping. It's like he's taking off for a landing.
As curator of educational services for Lansing's Potter Park Zoo, when it comes to owls, there's not much he doesn't know.
You can teach a lot of different things with an owl, especially a live owl, but the one thing they're especially useful for is teaching animal adaptations, because their body is nothing but adaptations for the unique lifestyle of an owl. And so there are a lot of myths and legends about owls. We try to debunk some of those or clarify some of those. People are fascinated by owls, especially seeing one live up close with no barrier between them and the animal. It's almost like a cat, doesn't it?
To some, they symbolize death, sickness, and the underworld.
And some people often have those mixed sort of emotions. They're They may have some real negative feelings about them because they're spooky, they're at night, and they're predators. But at the same time, they're incredibly beautiful animals, they're fascinating, they have these enormous eyes. They actually do a lot of beneficial things for people too. So I think that's one reason why people are so fascinated by them, because they may be a little afraid of them on one hand, but at the same time they're enthralled by them on the other.
In some small undeveloped villages, barn owls like these roost in the treetops. As night falls, they set out on the hunt. During the mysterious hours of darkness, flying in silence, to the local villagers, their ghostly shapes seem as spirits from the grave.
In many Native American cultures, owls, depending on the culture, may be a messenger from someone that has passed. It may be the soul of someone that has passed. It might be an omen that somebody is about to die. In Asia, Eastern European cultures, and a lot of African cultures, owls still have very strong, powerful roles in their culture. So it's important that we understand those cultures and take those into account if we're trying to put a plan together to help save a species that may be endangered in a situation like that.
Eurasian eagle owls are usually found in North Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. They live in a variety of habitats, ranging from forests to deserts. In the wild, their lifespan averages about 20 years. However, in captivity, they've been known to live much longer. From snakes to fish, they'll eat almost anything that moves. Even skunks.
Eurasian eagle owls, there are many species and some subspecies of eagle owls, but the Eurasian eagle owl, especially the northern one, is considered one of the two largest owls in the world if you're going by weight. There are some with longer wingspans, but not really many. And so, disposition-wise, even though they're pretty fierce predators, in captive situations when they're worked with, they can be, most of the time, there are exceptions, they can be relatively easy to handle for their size. We got it when it was about 10 years old. It's about 15 now, and they can live 30 to 50 years in captivity.
Eurasian eagle owls may have gotten their name because their large size is similar to that of an eagle's. Common misconceptions about owls have given rise to the many mystical powers people have ascribed them. From wisdom to witchcraft, owls are involved in some fascinating folklore.
There's a Welsh myth that if an owl hoots at night in the village, that meant a maiden is no longer a maiden by the end of the evening. So I think maybe that one came up by young Welsh men, maybe came up with that particular one.
Eurasian eagle owls, however, are not native to the Americas. The Western Hemisphere has its own amazingly varied selection to choose from.
Here in Michigan, our most common large species of owl is called the great horned owl. For their size, they're one of the most aggressive birds of prey, and they've known to crash into squirrel nests to try and chase squirrels out so they could catch them. One was actually seen down inside a chimney picking off chimney swifts out of their nests, and they will catch smaller species of owls, things like screech owls, saw-whet owls, even barn owls.
Great horned owls can be identified by the horn-like feathers that sit atop their heads. These tufts, commonly mistaken for ears, are not actually used for hearing. In fact, the function of these large ear tufts is still not fully understood. The owl's actual ears are located on either side of its head. Their placement is asymmetrical, meaning that the right ear is generally set higher than the left. This heightens their ability to triangulate sound and better locate their prey. It also allows the owl to judge how deep its prey may be hiding under the snow. The average adult great horned owl is 22 inches long, weighs an average of 3 pounds, and has a wingspan of nearly 50 inches. The great horned owl is the largest eared owl in North America. It claims nearly all of the Americas as its home. At times, it can be found in some surprising places.
Great horned owls are everywhere now. They nest in every county in Michigan, even in town. They nest in hollow trees in town, and people don't realize they're there. They now live in the suburbs too. Still eat people's cats, pet cats.
Dr. James Sikarsky is a zoo and wildlife veterinarian at the College of Veterinary Medicine at Michigan State University. A member of the faculty since 1975, Dr. Sikarsky has dedicated much of his career to studying birds of prey. Sikarsky works to rehabilitate injured birds in hopes of releasing them back into the wild.
Great red eye.
3 months ago, this female great horned owl was suffering from a spinal cord injury. On this day, Dr. Sikarsky and his students are preparing her for re-release. She is just one example of Sikarsky's many successful treatments. He is also involved in toxicology studies involving raptors.
Part of the reason I'm here is because I was heavily influenced by the first Earth Day in 1970. I had to give a lecture to my graduating high school class in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I called it the challenge of the future. How at Earth Day they had predicted that by the year 2000 there would not be birds of prey because of DDT and eggshell thinning. When I first started sampling birds of prey, the toxicology testing that could be done had to be done on a dead bird because we had to look at brain tissue for DDT and chlorinated hydrocarbon pesticide contaminants. But fortunately, the analytical capabilities and the sensitivity of the machines that we do the testing on improved so that we could draw bloods and check for chlorinated hydrocarbon pesticides.
By December 31st, 1972, the pesticide DDT was banned by the Environmental Protection Agency. The chemical industry's lethal legacies were being targeted. In the 1970s, as public awareness of environmental issues and demands for regulation intensified, the chemical industry was coming under increased scrutiny. In northeastern Michigan, Dow Chemical's past practices were drawing attention. Since its founding in 1897, the company has struggled with containing environmental pollution. At the time, the major issue was the release of chlorine gas, a byproduct of Dow's chemical manufacturing. More recent concerns regard the release of high levels of polychlorinated dibenzopdioxin, PCDD, and polychlorinated dibenzofuran, PCDF, both of which are toxic environmental pollutants and, according to the EPA, are suspected of being human carcinogens. Their release into the environment, according to Environmental Protection Agency documents, was attributed to the company's past discharges of chlorinated wastes. Once in the environment, these dioxins and furans settled in the soil and sediment along the Tittabawassee River floodplain and its surrounding areas. In 2003, Dow Chemical's own toxicologists wrote up a proposal to scientifically study the extent of the contamination. The grant was awarded to Michigan State's Department of Aquatic Toxicology. Mike Nadeau was the head field technician for the research team.
Yes, it was an unrestricted grant from Dow, which meant they kind of gave us the money for the grant for the research, and then we performed it unobstructed by Dow.
The main study covered areas along the river from Midland south to the Shiawassee National Wildlife Refuge. One of the primary focuses of the investigation involved the population of great horned owls.
So we know they're eating the local wildlife, which makes them top of the food chain, so they're eating everything, which makes them a prime candidate to have possible contamination.
All birds of prey accumulate toxins, and if I can use the bald eagle as an example, the eagle eats a big game fish like a salmon or a lake trout, then it gets all the contaminants that that predatory fish got from its prey. So that's what's called bioaccumulation or biomagnification. As the contaminants increase as you go up the food chain. So birds of prey are apex predators at the top of the food chain. So the great horned owl is a good one because it doesn't migrate. It stays in one area, and the contaminants that it accumulates then are going to be from the immediate environment. Whereas something that migrates might spend the winter somewhere else and get contaminants from somewhere else, and then we can't really be sure where they came from.
Even though owls tend to be stationary, getting to them can be tricky at best. They nest in very tall trees, and, as some researchers have found, they don't like making friends.
So when you have somebody climbing the nest tree to bring the nestlings down, we want to make sure people know where the mother and father owls are at all times.
The wind made everything extremely hard. Getting the ropes up and down was extremely difficult.
Great horned owls are very protective of their young. Like I've said, these are very ferocious birds.
I got up there, it was at least 80 feet up. It was freezing cold. I couldn't feel from my waist down after about 10 minutes.
Once the researchers reached the nests, handling the young owls was fairly routine. The nestlings were placed in protective bags and lowered to the ground.
Take some measurements and weigh them and draw a small blood sample, and we send them back up into the tree.
That was definitely interesting, but when I got down I couldn't walk because I couldn't feel my legs.
Trapping a full-grown great horned owl is another story. Their nickname, Tigers of the Night, equally applies to the day.
Nothing gets your adrenaline hammering quite like catching the adults.
One tried-and-true method for capturing birds is called netting. This simple process involves placing a specially designed, nearly invisible mist net in the flight path of the bird. But when it comes to owls, things are easier said than done.
We have a plastic decoy owl named Ollie, and we set him up so he's surrounded by mist nets. We set the mist nets up in kind of a triangle and have Ollie situated in the center.
At the base of that, we use just a CD box, just speakers, hook a CD to it, which plays an owl hoot continuously all night. And then on the corners of each net, we use bells, just regular bells. So once it hits the nets, the bells go off, and we're alerted and we can react as fast as possible.
The wisdom of owls may be more myth than fact, but as the research team discovered, they are very quick learners.
Some of them figured it out and actually managed to swoop over the edge of the net and behead Ollie before making it back out. So we'd come out in the morning and there'd be poor headless Ollie who'd been hooting all night without his head, and we just had no idea.
Ollie's was not the only casualty. Nearly every team member has a war story, especially Sarah.
And my crew called me to let me know that they caught an owl. And I ran as hard as I could to where they had the owl on the ground, and we were getting ready to do the blood draw. But from all that running and all the excitement, my hands were kind of shaky and I just couldn't really hold the needle very straight. So then I was holding his talons, and so he reared up and I caught him. And he caught me back. I ended up getting his talons stuck in my hand, like here and here and here and here. And he went through this flap of skin. He also got me on the palm of the hand about here and here. But the owl missed everything important.
The research team looked at the owl's diet, exposure to contaminants, and their overall population health. The larger study included a variety of animal species from mink to herons and wood ducks to house wrens. Like the other creatures in the study, the great horned owl had elevated levels of environmental contaminants, but suffered no ill effects. This time, the owls fared well.
For the most part, the owl population in Midland is fairly healthy.
And then on the other hand, you have some owls that are very specialized and make great environmental indicators, because any sudden or even minor change to their ecosystem or their habitat is going to cause negative consequences. So they're a good sort of environmental barometer.
The case of the spotted owl is one example of how changes in the environment can devastate owl populations.
One of the reasons that the northern spotted owl is so intolerant of change is that it faces competition and predation from other owls if the habitat is altered.
Pam Rasmussen is an assistant professor of zoology and assistant curator of mammalogy and ornithology at the Michigan State University Museum.
This is a bird that is a specialist on old-growth habitat in the Pacific Northwest and also through Arizona and Mexico. But it's the Pacific Northwest populations that are of the most conservation concern because they require stands of old-growth forest.
Spotted owl populations become isolated when their habitat gets broken up by clear-cutting of forest land. They prefer areas of continuous, uninterrupted woodland and avoid crossing the large open areas logging leaves behind.
Most other birds have a broader habitat tolerance, so they can live in second growth, whereas the spotted owl is only able to survive long-term in old-growth forests.
This isolation makes them more vulnerable to invasion by more adaptable species like the great horned owl. As a result of these pressures, the species has dwindled to near extinction. And today, despite increased protection of old-growth forests, the spotted owl's survival is still in danger. Scientists estimate that only 3,000 to 5,000 pairs remain in the wild. In Canada, populations may number less than 20 birds.
The decline of the spotted owl is definitely partly due to hybridization with the barred owl and to loss of its old-growth habitat and to predation by great horned owls.
Owls throughout the world still face new and varied threats. In 2005, Dr. Rasmussen was the main author of a 2-volume book entitled The Birds of South Asia, The Ripley Guide. Her research for the guide led to her rediscovery of the forest owlet, an owl native to India. The owlet had not been seen in the country since 1884 and was thought to be extinct. Believing the species was still in existence, Dr. Rasmussen gathered a small crew and journeyed to the heart of its territory.
So we spent several days looking all day long in the eastern sites, and nothing. We saw some interesting birds, but certainly no forest owlets. We spent whole nights just walking around, looking and listening, hoping that we would hear something that we didn't recognize. Nothing.
One day, as she and her team were getting ready to leave, they couldn't believe their eyes. There, perched on a branch just a few yards away, was for Pam Rasmussen the discovery of a lifetime.
And it was very, very thrilling because it was us standing there looking at this bird that we've been looking for so long that had not been seen by ornithologists since 1884. They were sitting out there in the open alongside a road in trees, and it was just very, very thrilling.
Only a mere 8 inches tall, the forest owlet's rediscovery became national news. Like the northern spotted owl, its habitat had come under severe threat from deforestation.
In the case of the forest owlet, that is considered to be critically endangered, and because the habitat is under severe threat.
As the human populations continue to grow and natural resources become strained, the need for conservation is becoming more and more apparent.
My work does have a lot of conservation implications. For example, if you find that what was thought to be one widely distributed species is actually 2, one of which has a small range, then that has direct implications to conservation, because that bird with a small range may very well be in need of conservation action.
The secretive nature of owls has long been a reason for our fascination with them. Their lives carried out in hidden corners of darkness fuel our imagination. But aside from sparking our curiosity, owls provide us with other valuable services.
If there's more species out there and diversity, the effects of disease are moderated. So diversity in the ecosystem helps us all. And then when I release one and watch it fly off back to the wild, I'm a big old guy, but I still get that warm fuzzy feeling too. So I feel I've done something good.
Owls have the power to stir our deepest feelings of fear and wonder. Their quiet flight through the pitch-black darkness of night and their haunting calls echoing through the forest depths create excitement in everyone's minds. Their lives seem almost alien to ours, and yet these magical creatures are still very much a part of our world. They're more important to the Earth's harmony than we realize. Dr. Rasmussen's own forest owlet is among the most critically endangered in the world. So remember, the next time you hear a hoot in the night, it's only the hard-working members of the Night Shift. Until next time, I'm Jamal Spencer for Environment.
This has been a presentation of Michigan State University's Knight Center for Environmental Journalism.